Oh, we're live. Hello, I'm Eagle, Eagle Gardens 1 on Instagram. And this is fucking talking shit with Eagle, episode 797. Hopefully, you guys have had a great weekend. This is a great guest to cap off, hopefully, what is a great weekend. Mr. Dean Gray, how you doing, my friend? You want to tell us how you're doing and where we can find you?
Yeah, I'm with my wife, Anna Ferraro. She's a professional musician. I love her, and she is such a jewel to be in my orbit. And I want to dedicate this to her, sort of as a confessional, maybe tying together some loose ends, spilling the beans, and explaining some things about my past that she's maybe aware of or not aware of. But I also know that you have a lot of listeners out there. I'm going to tie together a bunch of things.
That's pretty awesome. I love to hear couples that have been together for a long time and with that genuine passion for one another. So I love it. I love it. So
Let
I
me let
guess
me let me tell you let me tell you how I met Anna 5 years ago. Long Beach, California had a street fair, and I had some guests at my house. This was during a time I was living in a 1924 beach cottage, 1 block from the water, and 2 rooms were Airbnb, and then I had a loft which was up in the attic, and I had a old junky motorhome that I opened up into a bedroom. And then I had an art studio in a little single car garage, and there was a futon that folded out. So couch surfers and Airbnb people came from all over the world. And in 3 years, I met over 400 people from 42 different nations. Now, this was an eye opener to meeting new friends. And so I had a lot of students that came, young people that came. And, are you familiar with couch surfing as a social platform? If you're not, let me explain. It's kind of like Meetup and Airbnb combined together with foreign exchange student kind of thing. And so most of the people were young students on their break from college, and they were in America, and they needed a place to crash. So we sometimes there was one time in this little, very small cottage that we lived in. Uh, I had at many occasions that we'd eat together. They'd tell me about different countries, and they'd have different. For some people, it didn't speak much English at all, and I got to meet some extraordinary people, very, very special. But it also made it possible for on our honeymoon in 18 for Anna and I to be able to go places and know people. Uh, and they were friends. They'd stayed with me for a day or two or three or a week. And we got to know a lot of people all over the world that way. So if you ever have a chance where you have a spare room or a couch or couch surfing, um, it's it's something to check out. Well, let me get back to the moment we are today and give a little bit of a history. Now, in 2014, I was on Judge Judy. I won, and I got the money, and it was a chance to reach 50 million people. And I feel like this podcast right now is more important than that. 50 million people. Now, I did apply. I don't know if your listeners or your audience out there is familiar with the TV show called The Dating Game. I have a story about that, which I'd like to tell to the public right now. I was 18, brought along my friend who had just turned 18, Tiki, and he had a Fiat Spider, and I'd gotten this phone call. This Fiat Spider was his car that we used to go to the audience, or not the audience, it was the contestant application in Hollywood. So I got the phone call, bring a friend, go apply. Sounded pretty simple. got in a little, it's the size of a Miata, little Fiat Spider, two-seater convertible. And it was in the afternoon, heading down the freeway. And it's irresponsible, I know, to smoke and drive. I'm not advocating that, but that's what we did. It was a type of, it was some Colombian, and we got some rock and roll playing, our hair's flying down the freeway, you know, and the top's open. It's a sunny day. We're going to Hollywood, and we're going to be on TV. We hope, if we can get past the application process. So we're flying down the freeway. Tiki and I are smoking, and it must have been smoke billowing behind us. And we completely missed the off ramp. We were scheduled. We had a schedule to get there, and we were late. We were really late because we got way down the freeway, and then we realized that we missed that exit. So we had to get back. We were about 30 minutes late. So we were stoned, really stoned, and I don't remember all the details, but I do remember the way that this was set up is there was a curtain, and there was another contestant, a single girl on the other side. They'd be like three people on the other side that would respond, and she'd ask questions of them. And so the question came from behind this curtain of this girl I'd never met, and she wanted to know, if I could be a bird, what kind of bird would I be? Questions like that, something you're really not prepared for. So my quick thinking brain, in its stoned condition, said a duck. Now, I hadn't thought any further than the fact that I was amused by ducks. So she asked, why a duck? And my answer was, because they have big eggs. Now, I'm not really sure what the point of that is, except to just tell you that I didn't get called back for the second edition to this. I can't remember anything what Tiki said, but that was one of my stoner adventures. Now, I wanted to also talk just for a minute about Pink Floyd. I started smoking pot when I was 16. 1968, we went to some friends and I got together. We were just starting our first year of high school, and we were going to go to see this band called Black Pearl, local LA Long Beach band that had made it to play in this venue called the Bank. It was a big structure, built like a Home Depot or a Target superstore or one of those big mall stores. And it didn't have anything inside of it except for a projection room in the middle and screens all the way around, surround movies. And there was Buck Rogers playing, and there was flowers that were growing at a really fast speed. There were clouds working ever so slowly, all different projections, the light show projections with the overhead projector and the oil going with Pyrex dishes, so you see these blobs of color. And the whole place was really trippy inside. Now, our first time going there, my buddies and I, there were three of us, and we brought along some pot and some beer. Now, I'd never really had the combination of pot and beer before, but in that age and trying it out once, this was my first adventure with that combination. Well, we sat in the parking lot. We had altered our driver's permits to say that we were 18, but we weren't. But we did that, and we had that all prepared to do some really nice artwork that enabled us to go forward in there. But first, we lubricated ourselves with the beer and the pot. I don't know what it was, Colombia. Well, we're three young guys. We go in the door, and it's this big space with the projection room in the middle and the screens going all the way around. And over there was it was non-alcoholic, so it was just a bar that sold soft drinks and candy bars and stuff. And that was all a big black light area. All closed and your teeth would be glowing, and there were black light posters everywhere. And it was a place seated hundreds of people. And this tour that Pink Floyd was on was their second North American tour. And it was in the time they'd gone to 46 cities starting in February of '68, sometimes performing twice in a single venue. So 48 cities, and then in April, Syd Barrett left the band. So that was during that transitional period. And in July, they came across to the North American part of that tour to do 11 North American cities, starting in Chicago, then doing Detroit, Ann Arbor, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Sacramento, and Torrance. If you don't know the LA basin, there's Los Angeles and Hollywood over here. Then you have South Bay, that's Santa Monica, and then it goes to a peninsula, the Palos Verdes Peninsula, and right in that area is the LA Harbor and all the refineries. They're making jet fuel, they're making plastics, there's all these stacks of steam going up, and tanks, lots of petroleum tanks. It's a very busy terminal. The harbor terminal is one of the biggest, and so you have a shipyard down there, and so then that's Torrance. It's got this industrial nature to it, and I was living in Long Beach, so we had driven to see this venue that was just off the freeway. That was this big built-up concrete building. Didn't have a big sign or anything. But we went to go see Black Pearl. And the second act, which nobody knew anything about, or knew anything, my group didn't know anything about it, was Pink Floyd. We got inside using the ID that we modified, and the beer we had been drinking was Colt 45, which is a big malt liquor with a high alcohol content, but I never even drank that kind of beer before. And I guess it was necessary because we had to be a part of that in some sense or form. We all chose to do it. Well, up in the front of the stage was a big AstroTurf area. There wasn't any chairs. It was just all open space. And on the right and left side of the stage were palm trees. And then they had this light show. And the light show was just the most amazing thing that I had ever seen. And I got back on that AstroTurf, and I sitting in front of a couple of girls, and I just kind of leaned back and listening. I came on with music from Pink Floyd. It was during that. It was before Uma Guma, and it was from the Saucer Full of Secrets album. Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, Interstellar Overdrive, and Astronomy Domain. Now, the one that got my most attention was Careful with That Axe, Eugene, and that was introduced at that time with a different title. And it's like a pulsating bolero tune that just keeps building higher and faster. And I was laying back, just enjoying that music. And I leaned over my head, and all over my arm. It was the most relaxing feeling. Urged that for myself. Well, I didn't want to stay like that very long. So I just got myself up and I headed over to the men's room and started cleaning myself off and brushing it off. And mostly just beer. Well, back out there, and I saw the two girls that I'd been sitting in front of before, and I did back in the same position and be in front of them, make a scene. Well, I sat behind them. And this time I just leaned back and giggling about the boy that had gone. The rest of the night was just thing. Like first Pink Floyd story, and then '73, I was a student at art school up in the Bay Area, and Pink Floyd came to Winterland. I got to see that show, and it was when they did The Dark Side of the Moon. That it was the most amazing experience. I was a little high, that's for sure. I enjoyed the lead, and I was there solo, and it was the first time I'd heard surround sound. The song "Money" went in a circle around the whole Winterland. Really extraordinary. Anyway, I did get to Cambridge. I did get to where Pink Floyd started, and that was in 2019. I got to get down to the Anchor Pub, little brass plaque. This is where Pink Floyd started, right here. And I was just really pleased to be able to take a beer there, enjoy that beer. So I'm a big fan, obviously. I wanted to introduce the idea of how I have changed over the years. My parents were, my dad not so much, but my mother really was very, very strong and conservative, some progressive, and a Republican. And as a Republican, she was a dedicated precinct worker, getting people to register to vote, and having the phone bank, going down there to Republican headquarters as a little kid, to the phone bank and watching the precinct being lighted up, and phone calls made, and conversations were had. I grew up at a time when the California governor, George Deukmejian, was a local assemblyman representing our district. George Deukmejian became not just a governor, but prior to that, he was the attorney general. Very prominent person in politics back in the day. I remember George Deukmejian coming to our house, and they had a living room seated about 20 people, and came to our house, and I was just standing around waiting for the people to leave so I could get to the candy dish. In that dish, stuff that they'd left over from the munchies. And so growing up in that atmosphere, it got me interested in paying attention to what was happening in politics. And, you know, it has its own tribe. And there wasn't anybody else in my classes that had any other interests. From young age, politics was just part of my life. It wasn't in my friend's life, but it was sure in my life. And I remember that Lyndon Johnson had come to Long Beach and was driving up our street, and we were Republicans, but we went out to cheer the president. It was just really special to see the president. We didn't see it as some hateful entity on the, that was the enemy. It was like, we're Americans. The president's coming to town. Well, my mother was trying to work. She was working on the campaign, not trying, but working on the campaign to elect Barry Goldwater. Was running against. So I listen to this stuff all the time that my mom's doing. Listen to talk radio, conservative talk radio back then. And during the Vietnam War, I didn't think it was right be there. And so, time the war was under the administration of Lyndon Johnson, and so the opposite of that was a Republican, Nixon. Now, Nixon was not seen as Watergate hadn't happened. A lot of things hadn't happened. Bombing in Cambodia hadn't happened. So the alternative to what we thought was evil Lyndon Johnson, the good Richard Nixon. That's what we felt at that time. So I'd been paying attention, reading newspaper articles, and listening to talk radio, and watching the news on TV. And I wanted to do something. To end the war in Vietnam. And Nixon offered that opportunity. It's real clear, still defined, and it just didn't have, and you know how it ended. But at the time, it hadn't even begun. So we saw Nixon as being savior in a way, or at least I did, and others did. So around that time that this is coming about, 66, 67, Nixon's starting to move into that position. I wanted to help. And I wanted to help by, I had first gone to a presentation made by Dana Rohrabacher. Dana Rohrabacher was a young man who had, as a student, gone to Czechoslovakia, and he had come back to show slides of photographs of pictures that he'd smuggled out of occupied Russian territory. And so I went to go see this presentation at the library. There was attended by 20 people or so. And Dana Rohrabacher, college student, comes back with evidence of tanks in the streets that Russia denies are there. And it was interesting. It was curious. And you talked to, I stayed after this presentation, which was curious. And I had to ask him, what could I do? I was a high school student, and all of these things are happening, and I don't want to support the war. It's the Democrats were the people that were running the war, and so he told me that his group was called the Libertarians, and I'd never really heard much about that before, and I was curious. And so the Libertarian Alliance was not a right-wing group, in particular out here in California. And Dana was somebody who might be more familiar to you in a contemporary way, is that Dana Rohrabacher was identified by Republican leaders in Congress, and his nickname was Putin's congressman. And he had, during his time as a congressman, which was 8 terms, at one occasion he had arm wrestled. And so, but this was before that had happened. And during my association with Dana, he was a real dynamic person. He wrote well, and he made sense, and he was a leader in college, and I'm in high school. And so I would attend these meetings and listen, and I'd read these books, and I became the go-to person for printing. I ran the mimeograph machine. The mimeograph machine is a barrel that spins around and the paper goes in. We didn't have the kind of printers that you have now. It had wet ink in it, and just run these things off. It was kind of blurry. It wasn't as crisp and clean as the printers we have now, way before computers. So you had to type it, and you would create a stencil, and the stencil would put on a drum. As it spun around, the ink would come out through the stencil part, and it would print. Well, I ran the machine, and that was my role in the Libertarian Alliance. Dana would write something and type it, and then I would, edit it, and I would put this together, and I would put this in there and put a headline on it, and I'd print it out and pass it out materials for the Libertarians. And during this time, as a 16 going on 17-year-old person, I joined a group in Long Beach. Long Beach has like a 500,000 population and 5 high schools. And I joined a group called the Young Republicans, and there were all high school students. And at 16, the ones that were graduating had left kind of a hole, and all of a sudden I became the president of the Young Republicans. And so the idea was we would register voters, and we would go to knock on doors, make sure people were registered to vote, and pass out materials at other times when we'd have a conference. And ultimately, we arrived at the Anaheim Convention Center in straw hats of red, white, and blue, holding the American flag while Richard Nixon addressed the audience. And this was a group that on a field trip, we went up to Sacramento to, go to the office of Ronald Reagan, who was then the governor of California. Now, I'm in this organization that has all of these pretty conservative values. I'm smoking pot. And I smoked pot with Dana Rohrabacher long before he was a congressman. Now, Dana Rohrabacher, also known as Putin's congressman, is also known as a surfing congressman on Huntington Beach. And so, he's pretty proud of the fact he's got a picture in his office, had an office in Congress. Probably still has that picture of him surfing as a congressman. Not all congressmen can claim that. So Dana was a mentor in a time before these other things had happened. And at that time, he attended a national convention of the Libertarian Alliance in St. Louis, Missouri. I was one of the youngest people to go at the age of 16 going on 17. And so this was representatives of the entire nation. And it was the Young Americans for Freedom was a national organization that had membership that was made up of libertarians and traditionalists. The traditionalists were more like your evangelical Christians that are gun-toting and are against abortion. That group then was just a bunch of good old boys and rednecks from the South. And they were members of the Libertarian Alliance. And then there were the Libertarians. So the Young Americans for Freedom was the Young Americans for Freedom, Yappers, known as, was this large national organization made up of the traditionalists and the libertarians. So the libertarians, on the other hand, were advocates of ending the draft and legalizing marijuana, and the other group didn't support that. So I'm in I wanted to tell you that I was in a convention floor of well over 1,000 people And they were from all these different states, members that were in this group, Young Americans for Freedom. So on the floor were these positions that were voted on to be a platform for the organization and the national level. Well, traditionalists were for ending the war, but not the draft. And then the libertarians were for ending the war and ending the draft. So they give speeches on the speech floor, on the convention floor. And so this guy gets up, and I'm there, it's just a kid in this crowd of college students, mostly dudes. So this guy gets up and he gives this really impassioned speech about, the draft. And he pulls out a card that he lights up, and this happens in moments, in seconds. That this card burning in his hand, like this, and these traditionalists came over and started beating on him. So a couple of guys were kicking him and beating him, and there was this chaotic moment of being in a riot on people losing their control of themselves. And so then everybody disperses. People call it an end to the session, and the libertarians are wondering, next. And they are basically booted out of the organization by the traditionalists who made it impossible for them to get elected to the board positions. So I was just a few feet away from this violence that happened in front of me. But very fortunately, some smoke. And that's what got us through. In the chaos of our moment, we withdrew to the hotel room and broke out the smoke. And that, it made it laughable, and it eased our pain and our indignity. We were relieved in a way when this separation happened. When things happen like that are so extraordinary, and it affected me. It gave me a chance to stand back and see the world a little differently. When I take a few puffs on a point, and I've got 10 jobs to do and things to make and places to be, and it's a moment when I just pause, and in that moment, Spirit has come to me so many times. I have to say thank you for all of the adventures that I've had. So I took a period of time to be the publisher of Desert Star Weekly. Desert Star Weekly is an alternative publication that lasted for about 5 years. Still there, it's just not an alternative publication anymore. It's a community newspaper. Now, when I started this paper, it didn't have any pictures on the front. So as the publisher, I got to pick the pictures off the front and that was actually my idea, to start putting pictures up there. And it grew to be the dominant weekly publications that affected all the cities of the Coachella Valley, from Palm Springs to Indio. And I published this every week, 52 weeks a year, year after year after year. Now, it didn't start out having 30,000 people reading it. And it was a real big project. At the peak, we had 4 people doing distribution. We had steel boxes with our logo on it, with a little door bolted to the cement in, I think, 10 cities. Palm Springs alone had 20. We were in grocery stores. You don't see them much anymore. There were like racks of magazines and newspapers. We got our position there. We paid for it. We bought all kinds of boxes, metal things for distributing paper. Got into, I think it was 5 chambers of commerce. We were members of 3. We got it, and we got it. We were at the courthouse. We were in attorneys' offices. We were all over. It was a phenomenon. When I got it into taxi cabs, there weren't Uber in the day, so I got it at the airport. I couldn't get it in the airport. Somebody else had that franchise, but I could get it in the taxi cabs. So in the middle of the publication, that's where I put the nightlife, and I came up with a little code. So we print, it'd be jazz, and then another code for karaoke, another code for rock and roll, another one for this and that. So you could actually, in these 2 pages, you could see the whole of the Coachella Valley and the high desert up in Joshua Tree and Yucca Valley, and you'd be able to see who's playing where, at what time, and where's the address. And so this became a really competitive page to get advertising from bars. So this was one, when you're printing this, it costs money, and you got to pay people for their work. So you got to bring in some money and get advertisements. So this became the go-to page for a lot of people. That's got me into a lot of hotels. Now, what I had actually counted on as a revenue source were legal ads. Now, these legal ads are for change of name, incorporating a business, real estate auctions, and sometimes cities, counties, and states have to publish legal notices. So these 2 pages, and they eventually grew to 4, they paid for the cost of printing it. Now, I knew this when the dispensaries were first getting started, that they were friends of mine because we were actually following a similar path. So these initial ones in Palm Springs, in some cases, were prohibited from being published elsewhere. So I made it a point to put those advertisements in key places, like the back page. Back page was a full color page, and so then the dispensary started going big. And then they weren't just a small storefront anymore; they were like warehouses, and they were putting together products in the back room, and they were employing bud tenders, and they needed a means to reach people, and the internet at the time was just starting to grow as a revenue source for and meeting business needs. But when you've got dispensaries and you can upsell a dispensary and show them that they can reach more people, the ads got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it also, I'm pretty much pleased to say, is we ended up at a certain point, and I don't know what point it is exactly, but we had a columnist who did this. Even the smaller dispensaries were great advertisers, and they were loyal customers. And I drop off bundles of hundreds of this publication at the dispensaries to get the word out. Now, the real reason I started this wasn't to make money. The real reason I started this was so that I could help educate people to make better choices when they went to vote. Now, it's been a long time since I've been a Republican. I registered as an independent, and I've registered as a Democrat. But I'm proud to say that I put that behind me. And now I had a chance with a publication like this to tell good, honest stories. So as I was the publisher of this business, I didn't have to ask anybody, can you publish this? Because the things that I would write would be about liars, cheaters, people that were corrupt, people that took advantage of other people, people that stole money, and they all did it in the name of the government. So I'd sit through a city council meeting, and I'd sit through a water district meeting, and I'd start talking to people, and I'd be finding out these deals that people were making. And so I would, or they were a city official and they were supposed to do something and they didn't do it. So I took on the role of an investigative reporter. And that's where a story like this would come in. When I'd be catching somebody like a city manager with a contract that's worth millions of dollars, and then he's not following the rules. So I became a thorn in the side of the government, and they didn't like what I was doing. And some businessmen didn't like what I was doing. And I liked what I was doing. So when the water district out in Desert Hot Springs would do something funky, I'd write about it. Now, I can't tell you how many people complained about it. I can't tell you how many people sent me letters. Oh, yeah, my attorney. And I never got hauled into court for that. Because you can't sue somebody for writing what's true. And I had a knack for it. So these stories were all true. They were all provocative. They all had consequences. One of the consequences is they wanted to kill me. And they didn't like that. I had become a person who was on talk radio as a guest. I would have comments to TV journalists. I would lead people by the hand and I'd show them a story. I ended up speaking before the grand jury for the county. I ended up communicating with the district attorney. They didn't like that either. And so week after week, I'm putting out this product. I'm paying the bills. Now, it's granted, I had page after page of philanthropic events, where all the people get together and they put up money, stuff for auction, and they bid on it, and they put stuff together for charities. They have good work, and they show what they're doing, or they have a dance, and they put on a dance, or they have music or something to raise money for a good project. I was all for that. When the Coachella Music Festival came, I ended up with VIP tickets to go in the VIP section, to go interview the bands. I got backstage passes. This was something that I enjoyed doing. And when I would get an assignment, I often created an assignment if I didn't have an assignment. So it wasn't I had to go ask somebody, can I go there? No, I just call up and go there. I didn't like that either. The magazine in town was Palm Springs Life, and it's a glossy one, and it's beautifully done. And they do long-form journalism, but they don't do investigative reporting. So they had it wrapped up with the big-time advertisers in the Valley. And I'm just a new guy on the block, I start publishing this paper. It grows and grows as a business. I'm having fun. And so I joined professional associations, the California Newspaper Publishers Association, the Alternative Weeklies of America. The challenges of just, yes, we can join that. We will. And so I'd be going to meetings and calling people on the phone and just having the time of my life running this business, and week after week, I'm putting this beautiful cover on the wall, creating this entire wall of covers of this magazine publication, whatever you want to call it. It's mostly called a weekly. Well, this is growing, and I'm having just so much fun. And, I can't tell you how many times it was, yeah, sue me, please. We'll just get more publicity out of that. So as far as my business goes, I had a guy, Robin Simmons. Yeah, Robin did the movies, so he'd do like 5, 6 reviews. He'd do that every week. He was good at it. And then I had a guy who did. Oh, this was the lady who did Pat Krause. She did the Walk of Fame stuff, and the red carpet, and so she was great. She would show up at these events and send me these pictures and tell me these stories, and I'd publish that in the paper. Sometimes she's the Virgin Airlines letters and comments. I am going to make a confession before the world right now. I want to tell you a little story about Benjamin Franklin. Now, Benjamin Franklin was a printer, and he was a writer. And Benjamin Franklin had many newspapers. He went to France. When he went to France, he started newspaper businesses. He'd sell businesses. He was a businessman. And so he had a sense of humor, too. And I understand that he wrote some of the letters to the editor. Now, this appealed to me because, the best person that can criticize me is me. So I wrote critical letters complaining about me. And, it was fun. It was fun. I also had another ongoing dialogue, or it was a series, I suppose, of letters to the editor about the need for feeding the hungry of the world with edible tropical fish. Now, when you think about it, seriously, there's a lot of people that eat fish. Now, have you ever eaten a tropical fish? I haven't. It's never been served to me. Now, it may exist. And now there are some small shark species that I've seen in some decent-sized home aquariums. So I had this ongoing person that would write in and would enthusiastically support the idea of raising tropical fish for feeding the hungry. And so this was a joy to kind of play with the idea and share the comments and then make up names. Like here's a letter to the editor from Paul, and another one is from Wynn and Sandy, and on and on. So I use this. I will admit it is a fiction. Some of these letters to the editor. I really enjoyed when I'd have a contributor that would just come up with a good story. Andrew Wyeth exhibit right here. Good story. Now, somebody sent me in a good story, I would print it. But I also enjoyed the music. So, 2-page story about Ray Woods. So, it didn't start out this way. I just added new things every once in a while. This guy named Rick Rioza, he was a wine guy, so I published him. And so he'd be in every week. This guy was good. He knew what he was doing. Oh, this guy too, Adam Libby. This guy was a banker, and so he was interested in economics. So he would contribute every week. I mean, this was a great business. It was like being hot seat for a while, but you know, it was a joy to make this every week. Have something new. Oh, the Palm Springs Follies, where all the showgirls are over the age of 60. This was a hot show. Used to bring people used to come in to see this show in busloads, and this was back in the day. It was a real popular event for people to do. Oh, and then a music guy. This was Robert Kinsler. He's still around. So I published him every week. He was like from LA. And then Michelle Easton. Eaton. Yeah. Michelle was our editor for a while. I had about 5 or 6 editors over the years. Classified ads. It was a revenue source. Classified ads, kind of like Craigslist, but on paper. Sometimes I'd make up a few of these if I had a little empty space. I should tell you, I'm telling you about the fiction that the lives that I would create myself. You know, I would have little, I guess, episodes when I want to do something creative, you know. Then legal ads. Oh, Pope's Nude Bar. I went after this ad, you know. I felt like Pope's needed an ad, and you know, they were stuck in a corner of Palm Springs where, you know, it was kind of a warehouse area at the time, and you know, so I felt that this was important for the Marines at the Marine base, you know. Think about it. You're some kid, and they take you all the way across the country, and they put you in the desert. Now think about that for a minute. You know, what are you going to do? Pope's Nude Bar. Or maybe you want to go see some music or karaoke. Right there in the middle. So, you know, I get a bundle of like 200 or 300 and put it at the PX over there on the base. And I knew that this was getting results. You know, they kept paying for ads. They kept putting people into Popes. And I also felt that there was an important quality to having a full color image on the front. This one is actually made up of little pictures of covers that we had over the year. So I had this idea, told the art director, I said, yeah, just take a bunch of them, make them into a champagne glass. So that occupied my life for a few years. And then, now the date on this one is 2011. So this one is 2011, and this one is 2012. This was another idea. I'm an idea guy. So I tell the art director, yeah, take a food truck and make it our food truck. We never really had a food truck. This is another fiction. I created this idea of a food truck, and it doesn't exist except on paper. Right? So, you know, this went on for a while. So I want to bring you to a day in 2012. And I'm in the office, my own little private office over there. The other person's office over there was art director. Desks and computers for all of the salespeople, the office manager's desk, you know, there's a couple of writers' desks, there's the foyer, and all the lights are shut off because the bill hasn't been paid. Nobody else there. And there were people there last week, and now I'm in there by myself with the electricity turned off, and there's no staff. So I hooked up an extension cord to the other guy's office next door, and I powered up a computer, and that got me back online, and I could start to try and figure this out. And I had no money to pay people, and I owed about $100,000. This was 10 years ago, so it'd be more than that today. Investors, the printer, the staff that needed to pay payroll, the contributors, I couldn't pay them, and I owed $100,000 to this business, and I have nobody making anything, no money in the bank. So I got this computer that's hooked up to this extension cord, and just didn't even think I was online. I had only my cell phone, and so I'm just playing with it, and I have the page layout program, so I have a big X on the page that says headline here, and then I have another one that's got X in it, and I start putting in. I put in there. I type art goes here. Just kind of playing with making a product that can't pay the bills, and phone rings, and the phone says, "Hi, this Dean Gray. My name's Eddie Verdugo. Is your business for sale? Your newspaper business? What are you talking about?" He says, "Well, didn't your wife tell you? I called about 4 weeks ago. I'm getting divorced from my wife. 4 weeks ago. No, she never said anything to me. Well, I'm interested in buying your business." Now, at that moment, I looked out at all these empty desks with the lights turned off and $100,000 in debt. And I'm thinking, yeah, this business is for sale. He says, "You haven't stopped printing this week, have you?" Because that was a requirement to keep the legal ads. I said, "No." I'm looking at this page with an X here, and it says art goes here, and headline goes here. And yeah, I'm still printing. He says, "Well, good. Don't stop printing, and let's meet in a couple of days." And "Thank you very much. Yes, let's meet." So this man appears, and he offers me to pay off all the debt and hire me for a few months and pay me a going away vacation present. And I was so grateful for that moment. It was the moment of abandonment, of hope. I didn't have a plan. I looked at a business that I had that was saved from bankruptcy, and it saved my life in a way. I had put everything into this. I put everything into this business. This was a 7-day-a-week business, every day, 52 weeks a year, year after year. And I was relieved to say goodbye to that, because I wasn't really living, and I wasn't enjoying this anymore. There were 2 people that wanted to kill me. One that we had a restraining order from couldn't come near me or the editor or several other people. Couldn't come within 1,000 yards. I didn't want to live like that. And so I packed it up and left the desert community. And I came back to Long Beach, which is where my family was. And I came back to live in a 1924 beach cottage. And that brings me full circle to explaining how I got to the Belmont Shore beach cottage. So that was a relief to trade the desert for the shore. And that made it possible for me to meet my wife, Anna. And the way we met is an extraordinary story. We were at a street festival in Long Beach that I had invited 2 guests to come. And we were inside this art gallery. And I saw at the other end, I was looking at the paintings, looking at sculptures, and looking at artwork, and then I saw at the other end a glow light. And I was curious what was back there that this light was shining on. And Anna was standing there, just glowing. And it was our first meeting that meant so much to me. The next year we got married, and we ended up taking our honeymoon in Europe. Started in Barcelona, did several stops in France, and then spent a considerable time in Italy. My wife is of Italian descent, and it was a great pleasure to go see where her grandfather, grandparents, great-grandparents, going back many generations, to see this village, Sicily. And we really loved that country, that atmosphere. Spent our whole lives here in Southern California. And it's so different and so inviting to us that we're leaving April 25th to move our lives to Italy. Found a beautiful house in the comune of Barzi, and it's got history that goes back more than 1,000 years. Now we're at the moment we've figured out the scheduling, the shipping, and loading people to come and pack everything up and move it to Italy. So my wife has a upright piano and an organ that has pedals on it that are made for like making that. He has a pivot two career paths. One is as an organist for those big pipe organs in cathedrals, and her other is as a performing artist doing songs that are jazz and popular music. Joni Mitchell, Carole King, singer-songwriters, and so she plays a keyboard that it sings and has a stage show that she does, and she has 6 albums. Anna Ferraro. So primarily at this point in my life, I am working as her manager. I'm very happy to do that. It gets her gigs. I set up her sound, and I do the artwork for the CD, the poster, the media graphics. Now I'm doing memes, and the website is anna-ferraro.com. And I'm really happy to be able to kind of unload some of this stuff. I haven't written much, if any, of this stuff down as a coherent whole. What my writing projects have really been focused on for quite a while is a historical biography of a woman pioneer who ended up as the first resident of the city of Desert Hot Springs. Now, Desert Hot Springs is a city in the Coachella Valley, on the opposite side of the railroad tracks from Palm Springs and all the rest of the cities. So this city, Desert Hot Springs, is where I had the headquarters of my office in Desert Hot Springs. And so this city on the other side of the railroad tracks has a pretty sorry history as far as city goes. As far as cities go, Desert Hot Springs has declared bankruptcy and has seen a really unusual amount of stupid decisions by city leaders. They've lost millions of dollars in bad decision making, and they've done favors for their friends, and they've done odd things with money in the city of Desert Hot Springs. Now, I left in 15, so it could have changed by now. It's possible. I can only speak of the area of the time and era of the time I was there. During the time that I was there, I had another gig going. I was appointed as a planning commissioner for the city of Desert Hot Springs. And during that period, I'm real proud to say, I held off Walmart, and I was opposed to it. I felt that Walmart was responsible for a lot of small businesses losing their jobs, losing their businesses, losing their livelihood, and I felt wrong about it. So I was very aware of the politics of Walmart trying to come to our town, but I also knew that I could keep with my conscience and I could take a stand against it. And I educated myself, and I was definitely not going there. This was also at a really critical time in the city of Desert Hot Springs. Many people I don't know how broad your audience is, but many people might know of the city of Desert Hot Springs. Desert Hot Springs has a really, really high dispensary to resident ratio. It has a lot of grow houses came out there. During the time that I was on the Planning Commission, I was the only person on the Planning Commission that openly admitted that I smoked and enjoyed marijuana. It was either recreational or medicinal, and I liked it. And I admitted that. Nobody else on the Planning Commission had that. So that the issue of the dispensaries came in front of us as planning commissioners, and I was really supportive of that. Now, Palm Springs had been a city that had allowed dispensaries for several years. I ran their advertisements. There weren't any in Desert Hot Springs, and Palm Springs was enjoying annual tax revenues of $1 million or more than $1 million. So it's my thinking then, and it's my thinking now, that it's better to take that money than to deny it. So I was in support of bringing dispensaries to Desert Hot Springs. And before, as a planning commissioner, I had spoke in front of the city telling him that I was in support of that. The city had turned it down several times, not just the planning commission, but special study groups. They had one dispensary for a few months, but they shut it down and forced them out of town. That's the way they treated businesses during the time I was there. Now, the way the city decided to do this is city council decided that they would allow 3. Now, there was some debate about that. As much as the market could bear was what some people wanted, but they decided 3. So then you ask yourself, how do you decide those 3? There's 20 people that want that, maybe 18. So they decided, in their wisdom, that what they would do is they would have a 20-point numbering system, and they would ask certain questions on a questionnaire. those that wanted the dispensaries would have points assigned to different answers to certain questions. Like if you're not a criminal with a previous record, you got no points for being a criminal. It went on and on. So it occurred to me, the question is, who's assigning these numbers? And what is the criteria for making that assignment? Well, the city wouldn't tell me. It's going to be done by the city attorney, but you can't know. Neither can any of these dispensaries know. They got those points for. So it was rigged so that the city could make that determination and not disclose how they made that determination. I didn't have the money to force them to court about giving me those numbers or answering those questions. The city of Desert Hot Springs spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on a music festival that never happened. They signed contracts. Tony Clark, and they gave him money in the form of cashier's checks, wire transfers, that's what it was. And this was done over a period of time in which there was no work done, no product done. The only product that they had done is the promoters with Tony Clark, had taken the mayor to go see something at the Hollywood Bowl. The mayor and a friend of hers, one of the planning commissioners. And so that was the only expenditure they had. Now, the World Music Festival, Tony claimed, had Dr. Stephen Gundry, who's a very popular physician. He's ads on Instagram and YouTube and stuff. That he was on the bill to appear at the music festival. Ziggy Marley was scheduled to appear and was sent a retainer of $40,000. Now, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that were collected by Tony Clark were sent to an address that was in Marina Del Rey as a post office box and had no previous experience in producing music festivals and had no office. And the city went ahead and sent this money to him. So the city had this murky history of doing funky business, and they had previously lost $60,000. Now it was hundreds of thousands of dollars, and Tony Clark not available to show up at times that he was scheduled to show up in front of the city council to give progress reports. So we started doing a little bit of work. Andrew Morales was one of the interns that worked at the paper, and we went to look at the people that were liking this on Facebook. I created a group. People were growing. There was a lot of chat. There was talk. There was chatter, and this was all about, we're going to the World Music Festival. It's going to be great, And now it's got like, more than 1,000 likes. Who are these people? We start to wonder, okay, who's that person? Well, okay, and what is the agency that's doing this? There's an advertising agency, okay, and who are those people working at the advertising agency? We started reading their Facebooks. We started going, wait a minute, that person who likes that is the niece of this person over here who's working for the advertising agency. Oh, that person from Nigeria. Who's that? They have no likes. They don't have a profile. They don't have anything on their profile. They don't have any. They don't exist. We start to add these things up and go, wait a minute. These thousands of people that are doing this chat about all this talk about the festival, they're all fake. They don't really exist. Meanwhile, the money's going out to the promoter. Tony Clark had written his own contract. And in his contract, he said that if he didn't produce a music festival, that there was no refund of the money. It was written in his contract, signed by the city council people. Never produced any music or speakers or hired anybody. He made up this whole story that he could make it happen and make this poor city rich off of dreams of Coachella, off of the dreams that this poor city on the wrong side of the railroad tracks, they could make it. Desert Hot Springs has these spas that are like little motels that have the hot springs. That the water is unique in many parts of the world. This kind of hot mineral water smells like sulfur, but not Desert Hot Springs. And Desert Hot Springs gets its water from mountains miles and miles away. That's filtered over centuries. And it's unique in being some of the best tasting water in the entire world. In Berkeley, Virginia, they have an annual contest of municipal drinking waters, and Desert Hot Springs has won the award multiple times, top awards. Well, that city has some good things going for it with the natural hot springs, but it also has an experience that's really unforgettable, and that is the wind. The wind spins those turbines. You see them all over the valley, and Desert Hot Springs can be I would try and think of the word, shattered by a windstorm of 80 miles an hour that can pick up sand and can sandblast the skin off of you. That hostile of an environment. It's really cool hot springs. I love that. And then you have this hot wind blowing dust, sand, nasty. Well, at the time that I was there, they had gone through a series of financial disasters with the bankruptcy, and they had to sell off the city fleet of the street sweeper, cop cars, all had to go, be disposed of to pay this debt. The debt was due to the fact that a developer had come to town and he wanted to build a bunch of low-income homes, a trailer park, manufactured housing and trailer parks. The city was trying to build up its image, so they denied him the ability to build affordable housing development. And he sued. The developer did, and he won. And the city appealed that decision. It's dragged out for another couple of years. And then they lost, which added more money to the amount they owed, like millions of dollars. So the millions of dollars was paid for by the city selling off its fleet, turning off the water at the city pool. And the turnover of the new city council just kept making the same worse decisions. And it took years or more than a decade to pay off the debt. Meanwhile, the city is just, when I first come to Desert Hot Springs around 2000, 2001, they had one street light. And I remember going to one of the first Chamber of Commerce meetings, and the mayor made this big speech, Mayor Wyuker, about how great it was that on this corner, the prime corner of all of the city, where banks would be, or something beautiful, they're going to bring in a Wiener Schnitzel. And the people stood up and applauded. And I'm thinking, this town needs help. This town. I ended up living there for the hot springs, and because it was less expensive to live over there than in Palm Springs or Cathedral City or Palm Desert. And it had a high view where you could look out and you could see the lights of Palm Springs below and over there on the other side of the railroad tracks. And I have to admit, I kind of saw the opportunity here to change, maybe poke fun at it, poke it with a sharp stick. I did my sharp stick was a fun opportunity to be able to battle with the elements. It was a time of my life when I felt like I could do whatever I wanted. And it was true. I had the opportunity to tell all these people about it. I will tell you about one time the mayor of the city of Rancho Mirage called me up and said, "Hey, I want to meet you, but got to keep it on the down low." So I ended up in a restaurant with my back to the door. He kind of saunters in and sneaks around and sits down and starts to tell me the story. This guy the former mayor was a former intelligence officer for the Air Force. And as an intelligence officer, it's kind of the CIA of the Air Force. I mean, I don't know exactly what they do, but I got an idea. And so he started to tell me about this murder. Now, this doesn't happen to me very often. I once went to a bank robbery, and I had my little reporter badge on, and I got to walk across the yellow line and talk to the officers, and I kind of enjoyed that one too. But when somebody tells me that I got to, hide my face, and I got to he can leave, and then I have to stay, wait a little while, and then I could leave later, so that it can't be proven that I've actually spent time with him or anything. So, but his talking to me started telling me about this murder. And the murder was about a man who had died in the desert, not far from the freeway, just out, and he just had walked away from his car and he died. Who does that? Who just drives your car over to some desert place right next to the road, walks out and just dies. So the story was, kind of floating around about this dead guy, but then it never seemed to really come to a conclusion, and I just kind of ignored it at the time. So, but I remembered it when he said this guy's name, and this, I knew what I'd read in the daily paper, the desert sun, my arch enemy, the desert sun. That's why I named it the Desert Star, because I didn't want to be the sun, I felt that the star was a more appropriate for what I wanted to do. So he tells me about this murder. Now, I think I can let you in on something. I'm putting this out there because it's true. I don't make this up. So I can't take notes on this meeting. But what he tells me is that this guy, Steve, something, Uh, he's the city attorney for the city of Desert Hot Springs. He's also the city attorney for the city of Rancho Mirage. Now, all I know is Steve. Steve was the guy, he was the attorney that approved all of those bad deals, all those things where the money went. He was the one who looked at the contracts. Steve was the guy who had the list of the number of the dispensaries, and he was checking out who's going to get the three. He's going to make a recommendation based upon his analysis of his bullshit of this list, that nobody can know. The newspaper can't know, the radio can't know, the TV people can't know. Only Steve can know. And only Steve can say, that one got 19 points, and that one got 17 points. And if anybody asks me, I can't tell them. And so Steve, I wonder if he's still alive. This is like 10 years later. I have never gone back. When I left, I haven't paid any attention to what's going on there. So I'm only telling you about what happened during the time that I was there. And so Steve, what does Steve have to do with this? Well, he starts to tell me. Steve had a habit of going to gay bars. He was gay, and he would take advantage of young men that were on the down and out. And he would let them stay at one of his multiple places that he owned. So he owned a lot of houses. And this guy that's telling me this, the mayor, and I don't know any of this stuff, it's all news to me. So I'm thinking, well, okay. And then he says, well, the guy that died was one of these guys that he picked up and set up at one of his places. And the guy was not moving on. He was just hanging out at this house, and that Steve quieted him down or got rid of him. I don't know what the phrase was, but the idea happened. Something that bad things happened, and it was a result of that. No in the middle stuff that explained it. Just that. What am I going to do with that? That's not a story I can print. That's not a story that I can go on TV with or tell the police about. What does that mean? That means nothing. It's just hearsay. It's just what the guy told me. Now, if my repeating that has any negative consequences, I don't want that to happen. But I'm just telling you a story. I'm just telling you what happened. Now, are there going to be consequences for me telling this story? I don't know. I don't care. I'm leaving. I left that city. I packed it up. I got several years of 52. I got all the stories right here. Okay. Oh, dude, the guy that buys the business, Eddie Verdugo. He owns 19 newspapers. Now he owns 20. I don't know if he knows. Maybe he owns even more or less now. I don't know. But he had the Gardena Press, the one in the island of Catalina, Seal Beach, on and on. He had all these newspapers. He was a young guy, tennis guy. And he comes up and he meets with me, and he strikes this deal. He pays off the investor, the printer, the attorney, the staff, they all get paid, and I got paid. And I said, thank you. And then I had a website, of course. All these stories went on the internet. I got readers in like Uganda. Stuff would show up, and I'd go, where are you at? And somebody in Switzerland or South America and Peru, and like, wow, these stories, they got read. And there's like, this one's got like thousands and thousands and thousands of people are reading this stuff on the internet. And I would amp it up, and I would comment on it, and then I'd get somebody else to, and I would like a roller coaster, and it starts building and building and building, and then I've got all these people that are looking at it. Well, hi. Okay, thank you. So when Eddie came along and bought this, I hadn't, there was that transition period. So during the transition period, which I'm still employed by him and producing the product, he doesn't want controversy in content. It's his new motto. And so there's no more city council stories. There was no stories about the county or the recreation department or the cultural affairs commission or anything that had anything to do that was controversial. Now, by this time, the wine guy, the music guy, the movie guy, the astrologer lady, they were all gone. And so there wasn't anybody left over. The art director was gone. Everybody was gone. So it was all new people. And it was decided by, I don't know who, that somebody would hit the button and delete all of my stories off the internet. Now, I do have a suspicion that somebody put him up to buy in the newspaper. How did he know? And I understand my wife was really hostile towards me at the time, and her not telling me, and she had actually engineered a lot of the paper came to end. So we weren't talking, and she wasn't going to help me. The debts, I owed that money, and the business owed that money, and that money, and the business was me. And so it wasn't something that I really thought about, like, okay, I can leave this. I did think about, I can sell this, but by the time I was thinking of, I can sell this, I was looking at nothing. What am I selling? I'm selling, and no people here, and the business was all those people, and they have no means to pay these bills. So I was happy when Eddie came along. But when he deleted all those stories, I have them all. I have them all the Word documents. And I can do that whenever I want. Put that story to the light. So I've really kept my mouth shut. So that's why tonight I'm spilling the beans. So I always believe that if you want to create something, you define it, you give it life, you breathe into it intention. And that's what took me on this journey to make a newspaper and to tell these stories. And now I'm leaving, and I'll be very happy and very safe in Italy. From there, I'm going to publish these stories, and I'm going to make something out of it. And they won't be able to touch me, as I will be in Italy. And I no longer will I ever worry about the people that want to kill me. I feel the time has come for me to say adios to America and hello to Italy. Now, you might ask, what happened to Dana Rohrabacher? Now, Dana Rohrabacher is no longer a congressman anymore. He's retired, I understand, in the Northeast, New Hampshire, Vermont, something like that. I haven't paid much attention, but my relationship with him was brief, but it was fulfilling. Dana also was recognized as one of the persons that was very, in a way, he passed by Osama bin Laden. So Osama bin Laden, there's a name. Dana went there, I think it was sometime after college, uh, he might have been accompanying some U.S. military men. They were in Afghanistan, and at the time, the Taliban was working to try and get the Russians out of there. And America had not yet entered that area except as observers. And the way the story goes is Dana was like traveling with some, I believe, some Arabs, and he noticed that over there, there's a bunch of tents. And he said, "What's over there?" And they said, "Osama bin Laden. Just keep your head down. They don't want to see you." Something like that. So he was somebody who was kind of in certain places at certain times that were in themselves unusual. That oh yes, I don't know if I might have failed to say this, but Dana Rohrabacher was very famous a few years back during the time in which he was a congressman for having put forward a bill to go before Congress to legalize marijuana. And so he was, that's part of my marijuana stories. You know, it's like, what a strange guy. It's Putin's congressman, surfing congressman, libertarian leader. I did also, I wanted to mention this too. I once attended a campaign party for Dana Rohrabacher. When I was out in the desert, I did have an opportunity to, for the desert, before the desert. This girlfriend at the time. And I brought her along with me to show her off. And it was in Huntington Beach. And in attendance was Skunk Baxter, one of the Doobie Brothers. And Skunk is really a good friend of Dana. And Dana is a pretty good banjo player. So they started playing some songs together and singing. And I think I paid $100 to get in, and $100 for her and $100 for me. And it was, to raise money for his campaign. And that was, another time also that I met up with Dana Rohrabacher. As this is something that I'm going to say that if my brother were to hear about this, he wouldn't be very happy because he doesn't like to talk about his career. But I'm not going to talk about his career. I'm going to talk about Dana Rohrabacher. More than 20 years ago that my brother graduated from the FBI Academy. Now, the FBI Academy was not his first choice of a career, but it was his only career. He spent, a good amount of his life there, and it was not one of these gangster, FBI guys. He never got on, that I know of, in any kind of action like that. He was more, the way I understand it, is more like bank fraud, looking through a bunch of documents to figure stuff out, supporting documents, working with other agencies. He wasn't the one that wore the guns, but he had the mind of being at the top of his class with the legal stuff. But he wasn't like, the G.I. Joe type who came in that way. He had a degree in biology, and then he had a law degree. Then he ran out of schools that he could go to, so he joined the FBI. So I attended his he get integrated into the hiring ceremony of some sort at the in Quantico. So I attended that. I got to see they have a whole town that's like they made stuff up where they have like little play acting with guns and stuff, hostage situations, this and that. I got to see that whole little village there. I wanted to get a hat that said FBI, but my brother wouldn't let me buy one in the gift store because he thought I would misuse that for some reason. I so I got to see him swearing in ceremony. Yeah, that was it. So while we were in Washington D.C., I went with my dad there. It was one of our father and son moments, and in this unique environment, going to see my brother graduate from the FBI Academy and get sworn in. I got to know my dad. So during the time that we were there, I thought I'd draw on some cards here, and I'd pull in a favor. So I wrote to Dana, and I reminded him of us being together, Americans for Freedom and the Libertarian Alliance. And I asked him, can you help me? And can I meet with you in your office? So I did that. I actually went to his congressional office. There he had the picture of him surfing on the wall. And I chatted with him about the good old days, and political activism and everything. I don't know if you're familiar with the economist Ludwig von Mises. Well, von Mises is a kind of a libertarian economist, and at the time I was in the Libertarian Alliance, he came to Cal State Long Beach to give a big lecture, and my job was to set up the chairs. So I'm there. I'm like a kid that's like, I have something I can do. Yeah, take the chairs. And then put those chairs over there and put little signs on them, names. So that was my big introduction to that. Now, I'll drop a little name here about the same time because I got the neurons, moving really quickly right now, and I want to share a moment with you, and a moment of confession. I attended a school in Santa Ana, the city of Santa Ana, run by a man by the name of Robert Lefebvre. And Robert Lefebvre had a very conservative learning center that was fairly extreme. And Dana and I attended those classes. And Rampart College was the name of it. It's on the internet if you want to look it up. Rampart College, Robert Lefebvre. So that was another influence in my early life. I also want to give you one last marijuana story about Dana Rohrabacher. Now, remember, I mentioned earlier that my mother listened to the talk radio. It wasn't that guy doing it then. It was another guy, George Putnam from Los Angeles, a local broadcaster, who was quite famous for riding his silver horse with a bunch of silver on it and cowboy gear in the Rose Parade. So George Putnam was a talking head on radio, and he would, spew all this stuff. And the other one that was very popular with my mother was Dr. William McBurney. Dr. William McBurney's Christian Anti-Communist Crusade. This often sent her solicitation mail, she did contribute, And then started talking about his summer program. And the summer program was a mountain retreat in the hills behind Los Angeles, and his Christian Anti-Communist Crusade headquarters in Glendale, or wherever it was, and that there would be a camping retreat with the head speaker was Maureen Reagan, Ronald Reagan's sister. Now, me being a political activist at a young age, of age 16, going on 17, I'm thinking, what a great thing to do. Maybe there'll be some girls there. So I'm thinking, yeah, I want to go. She offered it to me. My mother said, summer camp. I'm thinking, great. You know, maybe it's like the Y camp where you got like bows and arrows that you shoot, and you got guns, you got horses, you got swimming, you got craft rooms, you know. No, it wasn't like that. It was a bunch of talk, but I got to smoke pot with Daniel Rohrbacher again. So I've had this history that I've kept bottled up, and I've not confessed this to. You know, many of these things that I've spoken of are little bits of stories. You know, they're here, they're there. It's at this time in my life. It's at another time in my life. So there's no coherent whole here, you know. And I didn't set out to be a newspaper publisher. It wasn't something like that I had an ultimate plan. I'm going to do that this week. I'm going to do this next week. This is next year. You know, it happened. You know, I've really been blessed by the Spirit really, you know, being with me. You know, think about it. I had nothing. I had a big amount of debt. A phone call comes. Things happen. You know, it all went away. You know, I left this place where people wanted to kill me. I'm safe. I'm going to a safer place. Yeah, when I look over here and I look at the landscape and I see those big oil refineries and all those big tanks and stuff in the harbor, how important that is to our economy, I'm thinking, you know, somebody's got it on a map somewhere, you know. But over there in the open space, you know, nobody wants to fuck with Italy. Who cares, you know? So I'm thinking, this is great. This is great. My wife's going to perform. She's going to have people there that, you know, they're not into hip hop and they're not into rap, but they like good music. They like a pretty lady to sing to them, and they like tunes, you know. And they have money, you know. We're going to be just a few hours away from Monaco and Saint Tropez and Cannes and Nice, and Rome is 6 hours away. You know, there's in Genoa, there is a tunnel that you get your car on a train, and next thing you know, you're in Switzerland. You're at the top of the world. So from there, you can go to Austria, you can go to the Baltics. You know, I got a friend who I went to high school with, Daryl Johnson. He's in Prague, and he's like somebody who produces music, and he puts together columns. He writes about music and international stuff. So we're going to Prague. You know, once we get over there, we're going to be moving around. You know, I know people all over the continent now. And so that's our new life. And what I'm going to do is take all these little stories that, you know, like carpet of fibers that, you know, it'll come back to life. You know, I don't have to reinvent this. I don't even want to change names. I mean, who cares? It's true stuff, you know. And you know, I put a lot of time into it. You know, I'm going to take the file cabinet too. And the file cabinet that's got all the proof of all this shit. You know, depositions. You know, official documents that I got copies of because I asked for it. You know, I'm taking all the proof with me. Now, and what are they going to do? They can't do anything. I'll be way over there, you know. And one of my favorite writers is Jack London. You know, if you've ever read any Jack London, you know, he lived a life, you know, and he wrote about it. It was different. It's not like what I did, but I'm gonna have something there. It's going to have life again. So I think I've kind of talked about a lot of shit right now, and that's what this story's about. This website. It's a blog. It's a blog, or what do you call it?
I pretty much call it like a cannabis diary of, you know, from start to finish your journey.
Okay, well, I don't want to leave out how I first smoked pot. I got to tell you. Okay. Now, I'm 16 years old. and my cousin, Pepper, came to visit. Now, I have to admit, as a 16-year-old, that never met somebody, and I'm thinking they're coming from North Carolina. They're gonna be like Gomer Pyle, kind of a simple-headed person that is somewhat retarded and in a way that is socially unusual. And I met somebody who was just like me. He was 2 years older, my cousin Pepper, and he was a long-haired hippie dude, and I wanted to be a long-haired hippie dude. So I wanted to change that whole thing with the Republicans and the Young Americans for Freedom and the Libertarian Alliance. I was in that with one foot, and my other foot was with my artistic side, wanting to be different, wanting to express myself, wanting to do my own thing. And it really wasn't what a lot of these other people were doing. I liked the psychedelic posters, the artwork, all those things that were going on. So he enters my life at that time, and he was living with his grandmother out in the town of Banning, which is not in Los Angeles, but real close to Palm Springs. So we took an instant liking to each other. And as two young people, we were into music, and we went out and bought records. And the records we bought were Velvet Underground and Heat and Ed Beck. Cousin brought with him record albums that were from Red Fox and other people from the South that spoke in a language that was unfamiliar. Richard Pryor. These were bootleg albums. They weren't on a label. And so Pepper introduced new ideas to me. We talked about things. And he was the first person that had marijuana. We went up in the hill behind Banning, small town, not a big hill. And we sat there watching the stars and smoking pot. And it was just so beautiful to see the stars like that and to let go of everything. And I have to be very grateful for my cousin Pepper being in my life. His true name, his first name was William Randolph Jonker III. Pretty much a mouthful. So we ended up, and his whole family ended up, and all of his friends ended up calling him Pepper. Miss him. Passed away in his 40s. And I really, really enjoyed it. We did smoke a lot of pot. And we got to go to Los Angeles to meet Ray Bradbury. And that was sweet and dear. We went to go see a play that was when my mom drove us there, dropped us off for the afternoon to walk around Hollywood. And we walked on Melrose, we walked on Santa Monica, we walked on Hollywood Boulevard. And we got to go to the theater to go see a live performance of a play he'd written. And he showed up. He showed up. We were such fans, we just felt this had been planned by the gods. You know, we were going to meet, shake hands with Ray Bradbury. I've had a really wonderful. I'm so glad that I could share some of these things with you. It gets it off my chest, spilling the beans. That guy who told me about the murder, the mayor, this intelligence officer, former, also had another part of his life. And he started World University, and it was an online training and educational program that now you see universities and colleges are doing that. Passed away now. I have no idea what's happened to my newspaper. The last time I looked, a couple of years back, didn't have any stories in it that interested me. I guess I just don't have it in me to like to be satisfied with Pets on Parade, Senior Talent Show, baseball scores from the Little League. Just didn't. It wasn't what I wanted to know about. You know, I wanted to know about movies. I wanted to know about astrology. I wanted to know about all these things, and I got to print that every week and keep up with things. I got to do that. You know, I got invited places that I would never have gone to before. I got to meet some really amazing people. I've been so blessed. Well, I think we're about ready to wrap it up. Been really, really pleased that I could share this stuff for the first time all together. Thanks.
No, thank you. I've really appreciated these stories and the passion that you have with both your wife, your life, your new adventure in Italy. I wish you the best there. And thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. You know, it's all we have, and you've given me a nice little piece of yours and a little bit of your history.
Thank you.
For us all to sit back and enjoy. And so I know this you may not take me up on this, but I one come all. So basically there's a few things we do here on the channel. And one would be this episode, this right here we have, and what I call the Weed Nerd World, which is a panel show kind of open up to the past guests. So anytime there's a Weed Nerd World, your invitation that I sent you this evening is always good. You are always welcome. Anytime you'd like to come on and share some more stories, feel free. No invitation needed. As long as you see Weed Nerd World in the title, open game. So with that being said, there's one final thing I would love, please, and be grateful for is a little silly thing I call the soundbite. Basically, at some point, it will be a commercial for your episode. So basically, what I'm looking for in my words is, hey, this is Eagle, and I'm on fucking Talking Shit with Eagle, episode 797. You can say whatever you want before or after, as long as that's in the body somewhere. I would be more than grateful. And I am ready right now.
Spilling the beans. You want me to repeat the whole thing?
Yes, in your words, please. They know what episode I'm here.
Okay, so you're gonna say something, and then I create a soundbite.
Yeah, I'm ready for your soundbite at any time. As long as you kind of throw that episode number 797 in there, I'm more
Okay,
than
okay,
grateful.
okay. 797
Yes,
gave me a
sir.
chance to tell things that are true and amazing. Episode 797 is mine. Episode 797, where's it at?
Thank you
Does
so
that work
much.
for you?
That was
You can
amazing.
take it. Is that going to work for you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's the only portion you asked me before the show there if I edit anything. That's the only portion of this I kind of record for that commercial. So that part will be worked for the commercial, but the rest of this will stay as is. So with that being said, I do greatly appreciate your time. Uh, Hopefully we talk again, my friend. There's been some amazing stories, and I'm sure there's some more that we haven't talked about. So have a have a great night.
Well, I will say that I very much appreciate this, and I look forward to it again.
Right on. We will do this again. So you have a great night. For the rest of you guys, it's still pretty early. If you want to tune into the Weed Nerd World here in a little bit, you please do so. If not, then thank you for your time. For the rest of you guys, please remember to do something nice for somebody. Random acts of kindness do save lives. And with that being said, thank you again, Dean. We